So
The socks are probably in the frame.
that's okay.
Oh, we're doing it.
Oh, mine? I thought you meant yours.
Maybe I should take mine
Yours
off
are
too.
yours are certainly in the frame.
I'm gonna take mine off too then. I feel like I really want to get the bell in.
Okay, great. Run it.
Was that the one?
That was great. That was also great for my splice pack, which I'll put online. But yeah. Okay, great. So what do we want to talk about today?
I mean, these words are coming to my brain as to like, where do we go from here? That's what's rising for me. What
There's a
about
lot
you?
going on.
Uh-huh.
Where do we go from here? This is a great question. I've been thinking about this a lot, like in a world way, but also in like a personal way. And yeah, like I feel like I've got a lot of different buckets, and they all feel a little bit stagnant. And we're also right now we're in like October, which is just getting to the start of that end of the year time where people are like, we'll deal with it next year. Like, you know what I mean? Like just kind of roll it over, especially in music.
End of the school year.
Totally. Totally. So it's like, it's kind of like, I want to get some things started and going like we're doing here. But then it's also like, realistically, like the snowball won't start to happen till top of next year. But I've also been thinking about how every 4 years of my life there's been some like amazing like shift. So like I graduated high school 2011, 2015 I graduated college, 2019 my first album came out, and now it's 2023. So I put this weird pressure on myself to like something crazy is going to happen this year. You know what I mean?
You're waiting
and maybe,
for it.
Maybe this is it. Maybe doing podcasts is the new thing, But yeah, I think I don't know. Where do we go from here is a great question. Where do you think we go from here?
I wish I knew. I mean, that's the beauty of like not knowing and having the solution that we actually do know.
Yeah.
That we use all of our past experiences to be like, oh, this is what happened 4 years ago, and this is what happened 8 years ago, and we put these patterns and forms to things, and all of a sudden, oh shit, it doesn't happen, and then what? Shit, I'm so disappointed.
Yeah.
I hate this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the suffering begins.
Yeah. You totally. Yeah. I do my best not to suffer as much as possible.
How do you do that?
Well, it's unavoidable when I stub my toe or the dog pees off the mat or whatever. But those are lightweight suffering compared to like the world. I always am hesitant to say that I'm suffering at all. But I think like, I don't know. I feel like I kind of swim in this area of like, it's not the healthiest mentality, but like I kind of oscillate between like detachment and then like really trying to find that center point. And I feel like I've kind of developed a coping mechanism of like, I can just zoom out and like, it's all good. You know what I mean? But I think a lot of the work we do here, getting me back in touch with that like physical form of my body is really helpful, because it's like, oh, okay. Like in I'm reading Power of Now, which has been really cool. And they were like, well, a lot of spiritual teachings say to like avoid the body. And he said, there's a lot of seekers and there's not a lot of finders, which I thought was funny. And it's like, you kind of have to use the body to get to that point. So I feel like suffering for me is just like, I mean, I would love to be like the monk level of like, you just, they say like, instead of like this big spike, you kind of just observe it like a wave and it rolls on. And I get to that point sometimes when I'm like meditating a lot and feeling really peaceful and everything's flowing and all that stuff. But other times it's hard not to. I feel like I also suffer a lot in my in the standard I set for myself with perfectionism.
But you're not a monk and you're an artist.
Totally.
And what happens is oftentimes when we do reach that level of peace and equanimity, we touch that peace and we don't want to let go of it. Yeah. And again, it's a whole attachment thing. Now you said something. You said, I don't know if this is the healthiest form, but I detach and then I'm involved, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But like, why even qualify it as healthy or unhealthy?
I get it. Well, yeah. Totally. I guess like part of the healing journey that I've been over the last couple of years has been kind of like, I'm almost like hesitant to say this or say that or not say this right or whatever, because I don't want to like look not like woke, you know what I mean? So it's like,
Uh-huh.
so I think a lot of the journey I've been on has been like, oh, like I don't want to step on anybody's toes, you know what I mean?
This is a really good point because I was talking to my best friend who's a social worker
Mm-hmm.
and training to be a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
She's already doing all that. And she said, "What do you think of our language and communication these days where we have to feel as if we can't say certain things?"
Right.
And I said, "I think it's problematic and it's getting to a place of where people are either not saying what they want to say in the
Mm-hmm.
fear of being canceled, in the fear of saying something that's going to really trigger or hurt someone."
Absolutely.
And yes, let's be trauma informed, but at the end of the day, are we actually being true and authentic to ourselves in expressing, getting what's in the heart out in order for that emotional healing to happen? So we're here trying to avoid trauma, but with the emotional repression that's happening through the repression of communication, we're actually building on a little bit more than we even think we, can handle.
Totally. Yeah. I see it a lot with the artists we have signed to our label. Like they're all in different ways afraid of making a mistake because like
That was a deep sigh. Hold on, I need to
yeah.
fully sigh that out. I'm sorry because
Yeah.
especially as artists,
I know.
The expression is the truest form of your art, and you have to
yeah
hush
and
it.
I think it has to do with well, I'm gravitated towards people that are like me, I guess, and I also have a lot of that. I'm also super cautious to make a mistake, and I think what that's done to my career as an artist, be it under like the umbrella of gnash, is like it's just created this very like safe, like rounded edges, like nothing sharp, nothing spiky, like don't look over here, don't judge over here, it's all good, we're peaceful, like we're chilling. And I feel like taking those risks and making those mistakes is actually what makes artistry interesting. But the artists on the label, some of them more than others, are very cautious about like, oh, I don't want to say this, or I don't want to do that, or I don't want to make this mistake. And it's not that they're directly addressing it, it's just I can see like they're not taking the jump and seeing that they land on their feet, and that's totally fine. But and I definitely resonate because I was 23 and afraid of the world at one point too. But the greatest eras of my creativity was when I didn't care at all about making mistakes, and I allowed my limitations to be my greatest strengths, and then I pushed those boundaries slightly and then push beyond. And I think that like in a lot of ways I look at the artists on the label and I'm like, I just hope you don't compile the same regret that I have at 30 about being afraid to make mistakes.
Or maybe they need to go through that
Totally.
to get to that level of artistry that they still haven't or are not even able to handle.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great artists that don't blossom. Like, I mean, Macklemore popped off when he was like 36. Like, Leonard Cohen didn't start playing stadiums till he was in his 50s. Like, there's these examples that are like, sometimes people just have to go through things, you know? And I love those examples because they're like, well, all right, there's still a chance, you know what I mean? But then I also take for granted how much success I've already had and have currently, and I'm grateful and all of those things. So, you know, it's all a balancing act.
I have to say I'm having a really hard time because there's like so much I want to also say, and there's this thing called active listening that I have a hard time. I want to introduce. I want to put a little plug in for that because I want to listen, and at the same time, I'm like, oh shit, I want to not miss what I want to say about what I just.
Well, maybe we need
wrote.
To implement a paper and pen system.
No. We're trying to be as organic and flowy and as truthful and authentic as we can be. So. Here's the thing. I don't think we should do any of that. I think it should be so chaotic and wild, this podcast, where it's beyond what we've ever experimented with, you and I.
Cool.
And we are like quite literally bumbling.
Yeah.
Recently, I had this fear. So I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a somatic therapist.
Should do that.
Whatever, will come.
Yeah.
It'll come. I'm a yoga teacher, somatic therapist, and in my early 20s. In my early 30s, I'm 40 now, and even recently, like I've used substances, and in my head, I had this image that people can't know that I've done like party drugs, like the ecstasy and the coke.
Yeah,
and
you brought this up before. It seems like something that really pines you.
Absolutely, I had so much shame around it, and recently, finally, and I want to talk about this because I think it's important with what you just said. Of this, like being afraid of being canceled. I wrote this piece in 2019 based on a memory of in 2000 from 2015, and it was meant to be the first chapter of my book, and I have 16 chapters already written.
Oh my
No one
gosh.
knows this.
Oh my gosh.
So I was at Skylight Books.
16's a good number. That's my birthday.
I don't know if that's. I feel like 23 is the chapter numbers.
Jordan, I like that.
So I'm at
One
Skylight.
more, Kobe.
I'm at Skylight, and this queer artist, poet, is like doing his thing, and I'm no longer listening to him because I'm like, oh, I could be him. I could be here doing the book signing, and I'm not. And all of a sudden, all of the chapter titles become downloaded, and I rush home because Skylight Books is really close to where I live.
Love Skylight.
I rush home, I write down the titles, and I wrote the first chapter in 2019, and I just published it 2 days ago on Substack.
My God. That's fun.
And full-on reveal of,
all of these
a
things
lot of the
carry.
things that I've been carrying, and
that you carried all through the COVID era too.
Yeah. And I'm here thinking I'm pretty shameless, I'm pretty open and whatnot, but like, why are we giving ourselves so much judgment and shame around things that either we use as a survival mechanism to protect our hearts and our nervous system?
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Learning.
Yeah, I definitely I resonate with that. I'm in multiple different kinds of therapy, and I have CBT, and then I'm also I have my own kind of therapeutic practices I do at home, and then I come here and we do the somatic work. And I think all of that in the last month here has really pinnacled in a really cool way of hopefully it's a rising thing and not just the peak of a mountain, but because I've had those too. But I think recently I kind of unlocked this thing that basically when I was in high school, my dad got really, really upset with me about this girl that I was seeing who was a little bit younger than me. And I carried that narrative into my life. And now basically I've just had a lot of relationship issues and things like that, because anytime there's a power imbalance, even though that situation was totally chill, anytime there's any sort of power imbalance, I feel guilty towards my dad for the narrative that he instilled. And that's not his fault. He was just being a logical, rational dad. But I think circling back to mistakes, I wasn't given the opportunity to make mistakes even then, because he was so cautious and so protective. And so I think a lot of the anxiety I've had over the last 5-6 years has been about, well, this person, and oh my God, well, did I do that person wrong? And feeling so guilty about all those things, and feeling iffy about those situations, some of them great, some of them not, but also mostly feeling this guilt towards this father role, or this spiritual leader kind of feeling, you know what I mean? And I think that was the narrative that really brought me down through 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And I feel like this year I'm finally coming out of that cloud through all of these different forms of therapy and churning and figuring things out. And it's such a relief, because I'm reconnecting with a lot of these people that I've felt this person, maybe they don't like me, or maybe, you know what I mean? And I've had all this social anxiety and all these fears and all these worries, and I've been breaking out of that bubble, and I'm so grateful, because it's I have the privilege and the time and the space to address those things. And so then at the same time, my heart hurts for the people that don't have the time or the space or the means to chase those things, because I'm 30 and I'm dealing with this stuff now, but most people never do. And then they pass it to their kids, and then their kids feel it. And
perhaps this podcast is going to help a lot of people process things that they're unable to because of lack of access. And thank you so much for actually bringing that up, to kind of checking your privilege, and at the same time saying, well, I really do care, and I don't know how now, but maybe, who knows, where do we go from here? Right. Who knows what sort of mental health projects that we can be on and whatnot.
Or conversation series. I think something that I really loved about the last run of shows I did in 2019, which was called the Broken Hearts Club, was this idea that we all come together and we'd have these conversations after the show with members of the Broken Hearts Club and just bring up subjects. We do a group meditation. It was awesome. And I felt that kind of what's it called? Satsang, right? That circle kind of thing. In yoga, that's what it's called, as I've learned from the Paul sessions. But that vibe was so powerful, because it was these conversations were happening and stuff. But even in that space, I was afraid to truly express myself, because I didn't want to make myself look like a fool, or not this high and mighty, I know the answers type role to these people that love my music. You know what I mean? So it'd be very like, yeah, like that's amazing. Feelings are good, and like, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like real me. And then I think like I dove straight into this album, The Art of Letting Go, which I put out earlier this year, but I've been making since like 2018. And I didn't really like show people that healing journey along the way. So a big crux of character we're having with my career is, in a lot of ways, modern Garrett, much more healed, is cosplaying hurt 2014 to 16 Garrett. And therefore the authenticity isn't resonating and nobody wants it.
Deep breath.
And so, yeah. So I think like that's something that I've had to accept recently, and I'm really excited for like this opportunity and different opportunities to just kind of express myself directly, not under the bubble of Gnash or of an artist project or as a DJ or producer or songwriter, or any of these labels that we put on ourselves, but just as a person and a human and a soul expressing, because I think that like it's for sure confusing for people, you know what I mean? Like
because they're like, well, this is the Nash we knew, and then all of a sudden this is still the Nash we see and we think he is, but he's really evolved.
Totally.
And also Nash
with no
is sitting
context
here, and Nash is sitting here like behind the screen for a lot of people. Has done so much damn work.
Totally.
And that is now in your body.
Totally.
And a lot of things are now out of your body.
Yeah.
Yet memory of the past is still kind of carrying you through into the future.
Well, yeah. And it doesn't help that like most of my financial, what I live off of is from the past. It's been over 5 years since I've sat down, made something, and then profited from that thing.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not necessarily saying that that's the goal. I'm just saying like that starts to degrade my purpose really severely.
Yeah, because you're an artist and you need to create.
Right. And but then if that creation has no avail, then it's like, am I a professional artist anymore? You know what I mean? And then that starts to drive you crazy, and you're like, well, maybe I should just be a lawyer and like call it a day. You know, do something that actually like has a purpose. And then the art, that's why you see a lot of dudes
go back to DJing.
Right. Well, that's why you see a lot of these dudes that are just like business managers with a guitar in their living room, you know? And it's like, oh yeah, I like to play guitar, but it never quite clicked, you know? And I think like the last couple of years has been like, I don't want to give up on being an artist, but I also want to feel like I have a point and a purpose every day. So that's why I think I wanted to chase this more seriously.
And you know, like I got this idea while we were in session one day, and I was like, oh, he has this album, The Art of Letting Go. And in my notebook in 2020, while I was in Hawaii, I had the whole workshop ready, The Art of Letting Go, it's called. And when I saw that, I was like, hey, I think you were in Shavasana. And I was like, hey, should we? I probably waited until you were done with Shavasana.
Yeah, you did. You waited.
And I was like, hey, should we do this podcast called The Art of Letting Go? Because
it's a great idea.
Quite frankly, perhaps we're preaching things and we're not actually doing it.
Totally. And also like music is like, you know, very, very important, but there's a lot of context that lives outside of lyrics and out of percussion and out of chord progressions that is important to share. And I think that like, you know, like for example, last night my therapist was talking about how he's reading this book, and he said the first chapter is called Know What You Don't Know. And I thought that was so cool as like a summary for where I'm at in life right now, because I'm on constant exploration mode. And I think I'm less on the seeker wave and more just on the like, wow, like that's cool. And anytime I'm not thinking like that, open-minded, open-eyed, I just get so closed off. And then I get angry, and then I get upset, and I get frustrated, and I'm pissed about this and that and whatever. So,
and it sounds like that's also a pattern, and it may also come up until it's fully resolved.
Yeah.
And it comes up, and you see it, and we talk about this in trauma therapy or like re-traumatization, and I'm not going to go too deep into that today maybe, but it comes up again in a different scenario, and then you're like, oh wait, I know this this from an embodied place. Should I get stuck in it, or should I actually use all of the skills that I now know to be like, I see you, I hear you, here, let's have some tea.
Yeah, totally.
And that's what Buddha did. I don't know if you know the story.
No.
Right before Buddha became enlightened, like right under the Bodhi tree, it's the story of Mara. Mara represents, desire and lust and all the things that, take us out of our enlightened stage.
Totally.
And Buddha was like, they're trying to get enlightened. Mara comes like, hey, let's go. Let's go to the thing and let's get you out of here. Why are you trying to get enlightened? And mm, Buddha says, Buddha saw Mara and said, hi, Mara. I see you. How about you come in for some tea?
Right. Right.
I mean, I'm probably leaving out some of the details
totally,
of the
but
story.
That's a good
You can
research.
you can research that on your own.
Right. I love
there.
that. I love that. Well, sometimes stories morph into the way that they're best served in the moment. Yeah. I do that a lot. There's like, and I have another thing that I think about that's like, how many times do you say something that someone told you once before you can be like, you know what I say? You know what I mean? I feel like 10 is the cutoff. Like I had a manager who used to say, success has many fathers, failure has none, right? At what point when I've repeated that to enough other people, am I able to be like, well, and not say my manager used to say, you know what I mean? Like it's
now it's yours.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
It's like when I first started teaching, I would just, teach out of the book and it doesn't come off as authentic.
Totally.
And then over time, like I've done this for 10,000 hours. Is that the perfect number?
They say that once you cross that, it's beneficial. Malcolm Gladwell.
So way too many hours since I was 19 practicing this thing. It feels a little bit more embodied and it's just it's not forced. It's no longer forced.
It's genuinely a flow.
Yeah.
When I went to the classes that you're doing in Eagle Rock over there, it was like there's no like book, you know what I mean? You're just like, all right, we're gonna do this now, and I'm sure it's like a different vibe because you're not just reading one person, you're trying to read the room, which is the same thing I do with shows or whatever. You know, I call them audibles like all the time. Like my whole band is locked in and we all know the entire catalog, and if I'm just like, we got to go here, we'll just skip 3 songs and like jump there and then come back and whatever. And that's also backfired because like one time, not backfired, but it's been a weaponized tool before. One time we were in where was that? DC or something like that at this big venue, and I was kind of over this tour, and this was 2017, and some bro in the back row was like, play I Hate You, I Love You. And I was like amidst like the most like deep ballad I have. It's called I Love You So Much, ILUSM. And it's me on Rhodes, and it was just like he just ruined the vibe, right? I just stopped playing. And I'm not proud of this now. But this is old Garrett confidence, ego, mush.
Oh my God, what'd
angry.
You do?
I stopped playing and I went, who was that? And then his boys were like, oh, it's him. And the guy's like, embarrassed. I'm like, you want to hear Hate You, Love You? All right, cool. John, run it, right? John runs Hate You, Love You. I do the whole thing. I do a full screamo version. Just screaming the lyrics. It's really uncomfortable, right? Song ends. I go, all right, anybody who came here to hear that, you can go home.
I love that you did that.
I don't, but I appreciate that. And then a couple people left.
Do the same.
A couple people left, but there was 1,000, 1,500 people there, so it didn't really matter.
But you gave him what he wanted.
Gave him what he wanted.
You were of service.
I said, especially you, leave now. Right?
Oh, you went there.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
You lost a fan.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not a fan. At that point, when you're on the radio like that, they're not people that actually care about me.
Yeah.
They're people that want to get a video for their TikTok or at the time their story, right?
And probably helped.
I did a thing, maybe. I did a thing this night, whatever. Boom. And I'm just grateful there isn't some, like, maybe there is some viral clip of it or whatever. But, yeah, and then I was like, all right. I let the room cool off, and we all took a deep breath together. And I was like, can we move on now? And, of course, all the real ones were like, yeah, let's go. I was like, great. And then I like crushed the rest of the show, right? Like from what I remember, it was an awesome, awesome ending. But it was interesting because that venue and I just don't get along. That same venue, I was, when I was just getting the artist stuff figured out, I got booked on a 3-day run with like a mashup DJ duo. But it was like my stuff, which is like super mellow. And people like threw like bottles at me. It was like crazy on that stage. So then going into that show, I was like, ooh, I don't like this venue. This is where this happened. And then it was like worse.
Memories,
know what I mean?
patterns.
Totally. Patterns and memories. Yeah.
Let's actually take a deep breath. I don't know what the audience is up to right now, but I could definitely use 3 full inhalations and exhalations.
Great.
Find the comfortable way to maybe like get that spine upright.
Yeah, maybe you're driving or you're whatever, but
the spine upright, not uptight. You know, just let the shoulders loosen up a little bit,
and the jaw. I always got to remember that. Oh my God, I clench my right jaw so hard, and it's like painful all the time. So yeah.
Just find the breath. Maybe maybe right at the belly, maybe right above where the diaphragm lives, if you know where that is, like right around the lower ribs. It can even be an audible exhale. Make it an audible exhale. Maybe one more cycle. Each cycle has a beginning, each cycle has a middle, each cycle has an end, and then the cycle repeats. Good.
It's amazing how quick I notice where all the tension is in my body when I do that.
You know, I'm still kind of stuck on what you did, and I love what you did. I'm going to repeat that because you responded authentically with your emotional landscape being where it was that day.
Yeah.
And I just wish you too can find the love around that action that you did, rather than I'm not proud of it, because what you did served a purpose. It served a purpose to get you to this point of now maybe moving with a little bit more grace with, you know, folks who are out there who love you. And even if they wanted a picture and a video.
Yeah. And that's fine. I love that. Like, film the whole thing. Like, show it to your friends, whatever. Like, I love that. I'm not, like, at a certain point in my career, I was like, put the phones away, like like whatever, we're here to be together. But my sister was really big on like, yeah, but I film the shows so because it's like overwhelming for me in the moment. So then I get to watch it later and reappreciate it, you know? And I was like, that's good perspective, you know? So
I have a question to maybe finalize this episode. Where do we go from here was the initial question, right? Where do we go from here? Because that's definitely a question worth considering every time we are in this like liminal space of not knowing where to go, like really just stepping back, taking a full break, full rest, full pause, like the breaths that we just did, and then asking that question. And then once we're on the beginning cycle of, does this feel true? Does this feel authentic? Does this feel right? With every project I begin, is I really just bring my feet to the floor, ground myself, and I'm like, is this right? And I keep asking that question. Is this the intention that I began with? So as an artist now, and this question goes for the both of us, I'm going to also answer it as a writer because I consider that my form of art. As an artist, does it feel right to continue in the path that you once were?
yeah, because I think artist is a widely defined term. I think that this is a form of artistry. I think that conversation is a form of artistry. I think personality is artistry. I think painting, clay. I mean, my therapist was like, you should see if there's a retreat that where you just try different forms of art and see which ones you resonate with. I thought that was a really good idea. But yeah, I think that just because so far what's been most well received when I put the label, if I put the label artist on Garrett, has been music, doesn't necessarily mean that that's it. So yes, it does feel right to be an artist. How does it feel for you?
I have a thought after that. So with like the current conditions, with what is up, yeah, we kind of changed the form of artistry that we've initially played around with. For me, it feels also right to play around with different forms of art. That's actually where I am right now. I started with my neighbor, who's actually the tattoo artist that did this orchid.
Oh, very cool.
Right here. She lives right above in my building, and we started having art hour. She's on her canvas, and I'm with my sketchbook and just playing with different mediums.
That's
cool. And I'm like, hey, you don't have to teach me, but like, I feel like a kindergarten student who doesn't
totally.
even know how to use pastels. Like, what should I do? Should I mix the colors? Is that how it works?
Yeah.
You know, just pretending as if I'm learning this for the very first time, and I feel so freaking lucky to have this mic with you sitting in this room.
Yeah,
you know,
same.
this room that was meant to be a community space and a somatic therapy room, and doing this right now because we're taking a certain form and changing it and giving it new meaning. And thank you so much for agreeing to this.
Oh yeah,
it feels
you for
fun.
doing this. Yes, this is great.
Where do we go from here? Just have more fun, I guess.
Yeah, we'll do it again. Well, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah. Assumptive that someone listened. We'll see.